artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, etc., all of the above, to address manual tactical processes and procedures. So in my view, RegTech is not a subset of fintech. It actually overarches it and should be embedded in the development stage of technologies and products, and applies to any sector or industry that's hit by some regulatory requirement. Now, to address your question in terms of where we are in the world with RegTech adoption and development in financial services, we're seeing a sprouting of many RegTech type solutions across AML, KYC, reporting, governance, etc. In Europe and in the US, we see them being leagues ahead in terms of development and investment into this type of technology, and followed very closely by Australia and APAC. In the UK, we see the regulators taking a very pragmatic approach and interacting with the industry stakeholders, holding industry events like tech sprints to encourage testing of technology and innovation. We see some of that happening in the US in the guise of sandboxes. Australia is an interesting example. In 2019, we saw the Royal Commission report, which was an investigation into the misconduct of banking and supervision and financial services industry. And it was carried out across the Australian financial services sector, which was perceived to have fallen below community standards and expectations. The report, off the top of my head, highlighted a number of deficiencies in the regulation and compliance sector. As a result, we've seen the regulators actually pushing firms to adopt RegTech, as well as adopting the solutions themselves. So RegTech is all about providing tools that help manage regulatory change more efficiently. So as well as firms and financial institutions, governments are also a significant potential buyer of RegTech. If anything, you know, the COVID pandemic has proven that government and regulators have to learn that they also have to act quickly and decisively to be able to offer support, relief, and guidance, but they also need to have the technology too. So RegTech, in my view, is here to stay. It's going to embed itself in the arsenal of tech weapons that are going to be required and will underpin a more flexible way that we can, that'll enable it to work for everyone. So I hope that answers your question.
You make great points. RegTech solutions are being developed in every country in the world. There is challenges and opportunities everywhere, as you said. So let's jump to another question, right? As we move from the devastating COVID pandemic, and we grapple with the new reality we're living, we must analyze the effect. I mean, the changes that it has brought, the shift in the need of every company to embrace digital more than ever. So what is your take as we emerge from the pandemic?
Sure. So, Hugo, you know, COVID has had a huge impact. COVID has had a devastating impact in our world in the past year. And when faced with the reality of everything being remote, from work, entertainment, education, to connecting with friends and more, RegTech solutions, through the use of technologies like AI, have offered solutions to continue some semblance of normality in both business and life. As a result, we've seen decades worth of digital transformation taking place in the past year alone, out of sheer necessity, and with AI being the main enabler and RegTech solutions helping to provide that. So the global pandemic has exposed widespread vulnerabilities everywhere. We see this in examples in financial services as compliance teams scramble to manage and monitor remote employees spread across the world. Regulators and governments are tightening restrictions, and the tech has had to run at breakneck speeds to keep pace with the increasingly sophisticated cybercrimes. So 2021 has the potential to be a really defining year for RegTech in the fight against global crime, fraud detection, security breaches, so on and so forth. And we really have had to embrace this digital transformation, and our timeline to it has been accelerated immensely. I hope that also answers your question and makes sense.
I have explained to you in terms of the participation of compliance professionals in the transformation of their companies, of becoming part of the executive decisions in every organization. I know you believe, as I do, that compliance professionals can no longer know only the regulations. So tell us, what is your view of the importance of compliance professionals now and in the near future?
That's a really interesting question. Hugo, what we need, in my view, is a super breed of compliance officer that can bridge the gap between technology and the line of business. It's no longer adequate for compliance people to just know the regulations. Back in my days, many years ago, as a compliance officer, I actually started to learn code. Now, I'm not a data scientist by any means whatsoever, but I found it helped me understand how it applied to what I was trying to implement from a regulatory standpoint, and how to actually better communicate with my developers when they were adding certain algorithms or systems for reporting or migrating things. It really helped me to implement these things, especially when we're implementing technical standards for a particular regulation. So today's compliance officer certainly needs to understand the rules and regulations, but they need to also understand technology and how it can be best applied to certain pain points and leverage properly across the board. So when solutions are being chosen or built in-house, they can give informed advice and opinions on how the regulations should be incorporated, and help enable to embed compliance by design at the development stage of these products and solutions. And also, if firms are investing in AI-type RegTech technologies, they have to be involved in the training process of that particular solution. Because most technologies nowadays are using some kind of AI or machine learning. And simply put, most of this type of technology we have today is just a complex decision engine designed to do things humans were doing before, make them more efficient and effective and automated. So in order for these AI or RegTech solutions to work, you need data and access to large amounts of it for these things like pattern recognition, developing predictive insights, and enabling accurate autonomous systems. And remember, if you put garbage in, you're going to get garbage out. So you need to have good, accurate data for successful business tools, right? And up until recently, that data wasn't available. And if it was, computers couldn't have handled it anyway. But in saying this, data in isolation still needs a human touch to make decisions. And the solution lies in combining the power of AI and RegTech solutions and machine learning technologies, all these tools, with the subtle ingenuity of human problem solving. So that human intellectual capital never goes away. And this is where the compliance officer's role is essential and crucial. So I hope that also answers your question.
Wow. A super breed of compliance professionals. Well, you also mentioned that the compliance person is becoming critical in the use of technology and needs to interact at every level of the business, know more about the business, the direction of the company, be involved 100% in every decision the company makes. That's very interesting, especially, I will say, for small and medium-sized companies. Now, Nirvana, what advice can you give to compliance professionals in our industry?
That's a really interesting question, Hugo, and I actually get asked that quite a lot. What I recommend is be engaged and proactive rather than reactive. Understand your business's needs and pain points. Connect with your key stakeholders and collaborate. Oftentimes, when a crisis hits, regulations and regulators come in when the proverbial's already hit the fan and the damage has already been done. So as a result, regulations come out way too late, way too onerous, way too costly, and only focus on the wars of yesterday. And really, it's like the fireman that runs into a building that's already burnt to a crisp after the fact, still with the hose of water running. So compliance people have a similar role, but certainly they can help mitigate such risks. So in my view, the role of regulatory oversight, whether as a regulator or a compliance person, is to serve as a kind of filter, not a bottleneck. A filter that's designed to protect, enhance, clarify, support the lives, privacy, health, and well-being of the business and the consumer. And what that filter dictates and who gets to design it is going to bend the continuum of technology and its impact on our lives, because the stakes are only going to get higher and the needs more complex. So you need to be proactive, engage the business, and focus on helping the business embed compliance by design. Because financial crimes and risks are on the rise, especially with the fast-paced technological development. There's going to be more incidents that will manifest, but not in the way we expect. There's going to be more sophisticated and unanticipated crimes that happen because we've been too focused on fixing the wars of yesterday instead of looking beyond the horizon and put prudent measures in place beforehand. So it's important to mitigate, collaborate, and be proactive. So when I say a compliance officer needs to understand the tech, it's essential because you also don't want to stunt growth and advancement either. As a compliance person, you need to ask yourself, how do I find the maximum efficacy of technology's impact whilst ensuring a fair playing field for everybody? How do we protect the business and the consumer without stifling creativity? Where are the borders between the well-being of society, the interests of the individual, and the incentives of the corporations? And your role as a compliance person should really be to imagine and design and create that filter through which technology has to pass. So that's another iteration of regulatory technology, or RegTech, as it were. So I hope that clarifies your question.
Wow. That was great. I mean, I am sure every compliance person in this industry will listen to that, and I hope they understand your message, because I think it's so important to where we are now in our industry. So thanks for your thoughts on that. Now, I am a consultant for the industry, and I discuss with their business leaders, the CEOs, the COOs for the companies, where they're going, how to grow, how to expand. And I want to ask you this. I mean, what advice you can give me to tell these business leaders and company owners, as well as fintech entrepreneurs? Tell me.
It's a really interesting question, Hugo. And again, another one I get asked quite a lot. We know a lot of organizations have a lot of legacy systems that they're battling to keep current. So in my view, not only do we need to retire legacy systems, but in terms of organization and leadership, we have to retire legacy thinking of leaders. We're in a world that's rapidly transforming through technological advancements, and I get very heated up about this. We've got AI-enabled technology and implementations emerging as a key priority for businesses, but we have to be prepared to invest the time, the money, and the effort to develop and harness these technologies, and not just have it as a little project working on the side. We have to train people, we have to upskill our workers and invest the time and energy into it, not just be focused 6 months down the line on our balance sheets and P&Ls. Because in order to effectively leverage and use these technologies, it also means that we have to get to grips with the real world data that it requires to run them, and the technologies like AI and machine learning, where you have to build a bridge between human and machine. So again, a lot of investment, time, effort, and the culture really needs to kind of trickle down from the top down in organizations. There has to be a real shift in focus and real direction towards embedding compliance by design and ethical compliance and ethical technology within their organizations. Because at the end of the day, a good business is a compliant business, right? We have all this reputational risk. You can spend 100 years building a reputation and 2 seconds for it to come crumbling down. So making sure you've got the robust systems and processes and procedures in place, as well as the right individuals to be able to help work with those and implementing the right technology to stay current, I think is critical. So that's my answer to that question. I hope that was useful.
Well, I will use some of your words, believe me. We do need to retire legacy systems. We do need to find the best people and build the best teams, the best systems for our companies, our firms. Nirvana, I also engage with regulators, with the regulators that supervise our industry, trying to bring closer the regulators and the industry so we can work together, always incentivizing the dialogue, because at the end, we all want the same thing. So subtech is becoming increasingly important, and regulators are overwhelmed trying to understand the technology behind new business models. So what advice you can give me and you can give to our regulators? Tell me.
Gosh, so I've actually worked a lot with regulators, Hugo, across the globe, on a global level, and also industry stakeholders. And one of the key things that I always say for regulators is that you need to understand the businesses and the sectors. You need to collaborate, understand the technology, and get your heads around it to help enable you to better inform your policies and procedures and decision-making processes. And I spent a lot of time actually taking regulators back to our offices in my former roles to kind of get them to sit at the table, understand the technology, not just be there as a naysayer or, this is how it's done, but really get their heads around that, because this is an ecosystem play. And everyone needs to collaborate and participate in order to have an effective outcome. They have a lot of challenges on their hands at the same time, because a lot of the information that's coming into them, they have to take that in, they have to ingest that information and be able to understand it and decide what they're going to do with it. And, as I mentioned earlier, they spend a lot of time being reactive rather than proactive. But really, there has to be also a new shift in the way they think as well. It's not a case of we've always done it this way before. It's a case of, well, what do we need to do? How can we do it better? And can we understand and get our heads around the complexity of the issue, how it affects our stakeholders, the ecosystem, and how do we collaborate to come to an equally pleasing result for all parties, and that we can work together. So collaboration is key, but really understanding the level of sophistication of the technologies, how it applies and how it impacts firms and stakeholders. I think that is absolutely key. So I hope, again, that answers your question too.
Yes, that more than answers my question. It is good to hear that, Nirvana. I agree wholeheartedly. Collaboration is key, as you just said. Now, I can't let you go without asking this, Nirvana. Why are you called the Regtech Badass?
So this is something that industry labeled me with, and I kept getting calls. This quoted by people and saying, "Oh, Nirvana Farhadi, Regtech Badass," and I was like, "Oh, well, I can go with that. That's fine." So it's a nickname that was given to me by industry, and also I think anybody who's doing this is a badass, and it's important to be a badass and be innovative and think outside the box. And I encourage and applaud that. So that's kind of where that came from.
Well, thanks for that. We're running out of time. I know time flies when you're having fun, and I don't want to let you go without some inspirational thoughts for everyone in our industry. You got some inspirational thoughts for me?
Sure. I've got some inspiration for you. One thing that was quite interesting to me was that the title of this talk is The Art of Compliance and the Emergence of Regtech. So art itself is something that flourished tremendously in the Renaissance period back in the Middle Ages. As you know, the Renaissance was a flourishing period of European cultural, artistic, political, economic rebirth following the Middle Ages, which took place around the 14th century to the 17th century. The Renaissance promoted the rediscovery of classical philosophy, literature, and art. And this era also expanded global exploration, opened up new lands and cultures to European commerce. And some of the greatest thinkers, authors, statesmen, scientists, and artists in human history were birthed in this era. Leonardo da Vinci was not only a renowned artist, but he was also a great inventor and invented many of the things which are stepping stones to some of the technologies we have today. We know the Renaissance emerged out of the Dark Ages, and it was a period that took place between the fall of the ancient Rome and the beginning of the 14th century. During that time, Europeans didn't make a lot of advances in science or the arts. So the Dark Ages is an era which is often branded as a time of ignorance, famine, pandemics, such as the Black Death. Now, stay with me here. There's a reason. Because we are in an interesting time. I would actually say that we are in a new renaissance, a new rebirth. But this time, our art is expressed through technological advancement that's leading the way. And the massive advances of the last several decades have given us a glimpse into a future that was previously reserved for science fiction and dreamers. And the dreams of yesterday's science fiction have become today's reality. So art isn't just an object that hangs in a gallery. The essence of art is creativity, and creativity births innovation. In the last year, COVID, our modern day plague, has certainly been a catalyst to this inevitable rebirth. But this is just the beginning. In the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to have leapt light years ahead from where we are now. And in the next 10 years, when we look back, we're going to be amazed at just how far we've advanced, not just on a technological level, but on a global, social, gosh, on every level. I also don't think we'll have a choice in riding this wave. It's something that's inevitable. It's already started. And I truly believe that, like the Middle Ages, we're going from darkness to the light. And, the new Renaissance begins, and technology is its creative expression. So was that inspirational enough for you?
That was extremely inspirational. Thank you, Nirvana. You just gave us an art lesson. I took notes, and I want to repeat this. You said something like, "We are in a new renaissance, a new rebirth, and our art is expressed through the technological advances that are leading the way." Wow. Nirvana, I know you have to go. I know that I've taken more time than I should. So thank you on behalf of all of us. Thank you on behalf of the international money transfer and cross-border payments industry. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you very much. This concludes my interview with Nirvana. She has agreed to join us tomorrow for a question and answer session. So tomorrow at 3:15 Eastern Time in the Aqua Zoom room, you can join us, and we will ask more questions from Nirvana. You can send us your questions beforehand, or you can just be there and ask them yourselves. Now, we're going to leave you with the first video that I saw in YouTube from Nirvana, which led me to knowing her and led us to this interview. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.